Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the SH Figuarts Civil War Captain America from Captain America Civil War, the new movie. The last one we got was from Age of Ultron, and it was a pretty solid figure with a few issues, and most people think this figure is almost the same figure as that one, and those people are right. It's entirely a new mold, but it's still basically the same figure, and I'll show you as we go. We have some new accessories and obviously some new details, but if you are familiar with that one, you're gonna be familiar with this one. It's basically the same thing, which sounds odd because it's completely different. You'll see. Let's get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands roughly 6¼ inches tall, and of course it depends on how you have him posed, but it's right around there, which makes him just about 16 centimeters. Now, somebody mentioned in one of my videos the other day that those measurements don't always line up exactly, and that's because I'm giving you a rough estimate measurement, because if you have the legs a little bit different, it's going to change the height. If you have the torso leaning in any direction, things like that. These are very close estimate heights for the figures. Obviously, if you have your figure posed even just a little bit differently, it might push the height either direction. So be aware of that. I tried to explain that to the person, but I don't think they got what I was saying. Anyway, those are the heights. And before we go into any of the specific details on this guy, let's just do a quick comparison to the older cap that this guy is replacing. They are, like I said, almost the exact same figure, but if you look closely, you can see all of the sculpted detail is just a little bit different. Every bit of it. And obviously the paintwork is different to go with that. Is that a good thing? I don't know. One issue is not a good thing at all. Because if you remember on this cap, the hips were a little bit weird and the legs look a little bit short and not quite proportionate. This guy has much the same issue, if not a little bit worse, because if you look at the thighs, this guy's thighs are even narrower, and the hips also look very odd. So we're going to talk about that as we go into the review. Before we do that, though, let's look at the shield. This is the shield from the first one. You can see it has that little bit of a sculpted detail throughout the star. This is the shield for the new one. The red's much brighter. Blue's a little bit darker, actually. Silver's about the same, but we don't have that sculpted detail. Now, I don't know if that's accurate or not, but now you can make your own judgment because I didn't pay that much attention to the shield in the movie. You can see, obviously, the insides are different too, which is kind of a good thing. If you remember on this one for mine, none of the pegs fit except for these two and a couple other ones, so it was a problem. But for this new one, most of the peg work on the back of the shield is not a problem. So let's get into the accessories. First, actually, let's look at the head though. That counts as an accessory. This is the standard head, helmeted head. If you take a screenshot and compare it, it's not perfectly accurate, but it's definitely good enough, especially if you're just going on memory, that's fine. If you'll notice, the eyes have that new dot matrix paint job, same thing with the rest of the face. Looks good at a distance. If you get too close, it looks kind of fuzzy. I like this idea that they're doing. Instead of having the more animated look for everything, they're using this dot matrix system for the human faces, and it does look good, but I think they need to get it working a little bit better just so that it doesn't look fuzzy up close. Still looks pretty nice though. I think that's pretty good. And then you have the alternate head, which is the topic of much debate. It either looks like Chris Evans or it doesn't, according to some people, and I'm here to tell you that's incorrect. At some angles, it looks just like Chris Evans, and at some angles, it looks just like Scott Eastwood, and then at some angles, it looks just like, what's the guy's name, Colton Haynes, maybe? The guy from Arrow, Red Arrow? Looks just like him. So, yes, it's good, and no, it's not good at the same time. You can see they did do the dot matrix paint job on there, which is pretty nice. The hair is metallic. I'm still not a huge fan of that, but it's not super metallic, so it's okay. It is a little bit glossy for me. And unfortunately, mine has a scratch on the nose. You see that right there? Very disappointing to have a new figure with a scratch on it out of the package. Really don't care for that. Alright, let's move on. You already saw the shield. Let's look at the accessories that go with the shield. So those peg holes have different measurements. So you're going to have to figure out which one goes in which. I could show you, but it won't help you since you'll have to do it on the fly. Anyway, we do have this piece which goes in the little one, and that is how you connect it to his wrist to have him throw it. It'll snap onto the certain hand of the wrist, and it looks like he's holding it with this clear piece. It's really a nice effect, and you'll see in the photos. It won't really do any good for me to show you live, as it were, but you'll see it's very nicely done. I like that a lot, and the hands that go with that look like this. You see they have the little key on there, so you get the idea. Then we can get this one, which is similar to the other one, but you peg this into the shield if you don't throw it on the table. It's kind of a monotonous review, I know, because there's lots of little bits, but that's what we're here for anyway. So that has a peg on it, and that pegs into his back. You undo that little center part on his crisscross thing, and that'll peg into his back. So that's good. Then you have this piece, which is for him holding it. Obviously it's made to look like a leather strap, but it's just a piece of plastic, so we have that. And that will go over his arm, and then you have hands that have the small strap on them. So that'll be the one that he's actually holding. So you'll peg these in here. Some of the peg work is a little iffy. You're going to have to play with it, but you can see the arm will go through there, and then the hand pegs in, and you have one for either side. Then the last bit for the shield is just the two little straps that aren't being used for anything. You'll use these with both the throwing one and the one that goes on the back. So that covers all of the hands except for two and all of the shield stuff. The other hands we have are just your kind of general casual pose. Nicely done for the most part, except you can see there's some black spots on the fingers which should not be there. Missed paint. Kind of a bummer, but it's not terrible. As far as the figure goes, we have some missed paint also. If you look at the side here, I have a lot of blue coming through, which is kind of a bummer. Otherwise, it's pretty well done. It doesn't have the most paint on it, but what is there is it's clean enough. I'm okay with it. Generally speaking, it looks pretty good. The anatomy's not terrible. I feel like the legs are a little short, but in comparison to everything else, I think it's just an optical illusion based on the articulation. If you look at it from the side, they don't look too short, but if you look at it from the front, they kind of do. So I think it might just be the thickness of the torso, making it look a little bit off, and maybe the thinness of the upper thighs. That throws it off a little bit as well. I think it's okay though. As far as the articulation goes, we have a double ball peg for the head and a double ball peg, maybe a single ball peg for the neck. Can't really say for sure because I didn't pull it apart. I can. Let's pull it apart. We're supposed to anyway, right? For the interchangeable head. All right, single ball peg for the neck. I'm not going to pull apart the head because it's not meant to, but I'm pretty sure it's a double ball peg for the actual head, so that's all right. For the shoulders, we have our butterfly joint just like before. Most of this is almost exactly the same as the other figure, so if you saw that one, you're pretty familiar with this one. We have a ball peg connected to the butterfly joint that lets it all move around. Ball hinge for the shoulder. It's not technically a ball hinge, but it functions the same way, with a bicep swivel right there. The shoulder pad, on the other hand, is not as good as the original. It does have that hinge, and it does move with the arm, so that's a good thing. But if you look, like I just did, if you bring the arm out, the shoulder pad doesn't fit down over it, so that's not great. If you look at the original one, if you bring the arm out, the shoulder pad fits over it, and it looks much better. So that's a bit of a bummer for me. I do wish that was not the case on this figure. Double jointed elbow, really good range. Not the best looking. It could definitely be a better looking elbow, but it's okay. We have a ball hinge for the hands, or for the wrist. So that shouldn't be any problem at all. Most people will have no problem posing that. For the torso, we have a ball peg in the upper torso with a hinge at the bottom. So you have that hinge that brings everything forward and back, which is fine. Still weird the way they have that gapping in there, but what are you going to do? And then if you hear that, my ball hinge is completely stuck. Or I mean the ball peg. The hinge works fine. The peg just doesn't want to move. It's supposed to move just like this. So you have the hinge forward and back. This one does get stuck like that. So forward and back, and then you're supposed to be able to move it all the way around like however you want. This one, totally stuck. Hopefully you guys don't have that same issue, but I do. So I'm going to have to see if I can take that apart and fix it. As of right now, kind of useless. We have a ball peg for the lower torso. We do have some gapping, but it's necessity because if you didn't, you wouldn't be able to actually have the range of motion. So it works well enough, but the width and narrowness of that torso, which is rather unusual, does prevent it from doing much of a rotation. And with the ball stuck up there, kind of a problem. For the hips, we have the hinged ball pegs, just like we had before, with the thigh swivel and then ball peg, which gives you pretty good range. It's not bad, but it definitely is goofy looking. And it just doesn't line up very well. It's okay. Once you get it posed, it won't be a big deal, but it's definitely kind of an odd choice the way they did it. I think if they went with the newer figure or Dragon Ball Z design, or like the Kamen Rider figures, would have been much better. Double jointed knee works no problem at all. Excuse me. And then we have a hinge for the ankle, which can rotate, and it gives you an ankle rocker also. However, the ankles are very stiff, and the way the ankle hinge is designed, it's very fragile. So if you try to force the ankle rocker, which doesn't want to move, you could break that hinge. So you might want to hit it with a hairdryer or some warm water and make sure you dry it out, because there are metal pins in there. But it technically gives you a full ball hinge for the ankle. It just is really stuck. Then we have a toe hinge, which is questionable. It's okay. So just like the old Cap figure, it's both really good and really problematic at the same time. Once you get it posed, it'll look nice. And once you ignore some of the issues, it's a really good figure. So it's one of those ones where I recommend it, but with some reservations. Use some caution. Pay attention to everything I said, and you'll be okay with it. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos every day. We cover action figures, video games, movies, TV shows, all kinds of stuff. Check out some playlists. I have lots and lots of reviews and videos up there. So do all of that stuff. Make sure you click that subscribe button. And in the meantime, keep collecting.